This part is on the census and the American Community Survey. And so for a little bit of background, the census is done by the U.S. government. It's taken every 10 years. It started in 1790, but it's changed over time. And it's a full population count, and it's used for a huge amount of government planning. So it's pretty useful. It's used a ton. The ACS, which is the American Community Survey, is a sample that's done every year. And so it's continuous, and you can get 1 year estimates, and they have a good 5-year like rolling time span. So if you want to see trends over time, the 5-year tends to be pretty consistent. It's not as wildly up and down as a 1 year because it's a sample, and so you don't get everyone. Does that make sense? And so when you work with this data, one thing to pay close attention to is the level that you're at, and you can get data at the state level. You can also get it at the county level, and this is just population. So you can see that's Wake that's standing out in Mecklenburg. You can also get it at the census tract level, which are kind of like neighborhoods that the census has defined. And this is Buncombe County, if you don't recognize the outline. And this is data from the most recent ACS. You can also get it at the block group level, which is an even smaller breakdown. And here you can kind of see this is population, and it looks a little bit weird than what you might be expecting, because you would think that this area would be a lot brighter, but it's not, because it's a lot smaller, or that's a lot more broken out. And so if you do it by density, then you can see that this is right where Asheville is, and that's 26 and 40. And so when you work with this data, it's nice because you can get these smaller neighborhood pieces, but you do have to kind of standardize it by area. Does that make sense? Then there's a couple different ways to access this data. There's a huge amount for it right here. If you just go straight to the census website, most of the time you can kind of find what you need, especially if you're not looking for a huge amount. Like if you're not looking for every county in the US, you can get things pretty easily. You can just go straight to access local data. It'll work you through. And you can get good all these different estimates. There's a lot of different variables in this data set. So,
if you're showing the website, we can't see.
Sorry. There we go. Let me back up. If you go straight to the census website, you can see it. And then if you click on Access Local Data, just search for Buncombe County, and it'll take you right here. It looks a little blurry, but has all these different things that could be useful for you to know about. There is also, you can just go to this is data.census.gov. And this will give you a lot of nice base rates for different things you might want to know about. And this is also pretty nice because as you go through it will give you different graphs and things that are already there. And so if you need something for a presentation or for baselines, it's just already here. And you can, a lot of it, it'll tell you where to find it or how to access it. And then the last website is Census Reporter. and that's pretty similar to the data.census.gov. If you need something that's a little bit stronger, there's a lot of ways you can code it. The Census has a really nice API to access it in the American Community Survey. And so if you know Python or R or a lot of other coding languages have a way to access it, you can get it pretty quickly. And so that's, if you need something that automatically updates, or if you need it, if you want like every census tract in Western North Carolina, that's going to be the best way to do it. That way you're not clicking every single one and writing it down. And one project that we've done or currently working on at Code for Asheville is the Asheville Community Data Library. And we have a little census section that talks about how to access it and breaks it down using R and Python. And so it has all the code for you, which is pretty nice. It's especially pretty helpful because like we have a data set in there that lists the counties in Western North Carolina, so I already have the names for it, and it will tell you different things. Like how to standardize and things like that. So it's already there for you if you happen to know those programming languages. And a couple other ways you can access it, or a lot of companies will have this packaged nicely for you. You'll normally have to pay for it, but that can be really nice if you need something that updates automatically and you don't have to worry about it. Because, for example, during the government shutdown, sometimes the APIs will break or they'll quit working, and that'll be really frustrating if you need to get that data then. But if you're paying someone to have it, they can handle any weird issues like that for you. And then this is a couple use cases for this that are really, really great. It contains a large variety of different demographics. It's got stuff on race, age, gender, a lot of economic stuff. And so it's really, really good for setting baselines. Like anytime you have a report that says like, in this region, like X amount of this demographic have happened, like something's affected this demographic a lot, you can standardize it using the census that says like, well, is that typical or normal? Like if something's happened to 100 people that are over 65, but it's only happened to 5 people under 65. It's like, well, that's a big number, but like, is this area just filled with a lot of people over 65 and that's why it's that way, or is it not? So it's really, really helpful from seeing if things are outliers or seeing if things weird. It's also really helpful because there's so many different variables, so you can create good indices. A lot of people will do this for economics, like the number of people above and below a poverty level. And so you can get good like metrics on, what's the word I'm thinking of when it's disparate, like there's a lot of people who are really rich in area and a lot of people who are really poor, or is it just that there's a lot of people who are really rich? Like a Gini index. And the last thing is pretty good for trends over time. The ACS is really nice for this because you can get like last year's number and going back. The census not so much because it's only once every 10 years, but really big trends you can get. Census also will change a little bit, so you might can only get it past then. But there's a couple catches when you work with this data that you need to watch out for. The biggest one is you have race and ethnicity, which breaks down to Hispanic and non-Hispanic, and this will trip a lot of people up, where if you just want to know, I just want the Hispanic people, it's like a cross-tabulation where you have like white, black versus Hispanic, non-Hispanic, and so you can't just get it. You'll have to take, normally what I'll do is I'll put anyone who says they're Hispanic and Hispanic and then break out the rest of the races. But you do have like white Hispanic or white non-Hispanic. And so if you ever look at like an official government document and it says a phrase like white non-Hispanic people, this is where this is coming from. I don't know why they set it up like this. I can't actually figure that out, but it's not a nice breakdown from race that you want. When you work with the ACS, it has what's called a margin of error. And because they use a sample, they don't really know. The census is like a hard number that they like to give out. They're just like, yeah, we think it's this many people. They say it's like, well, we think it's like this many people, but here's like a range you can get. And you can play around with that and do some cool statistics, but you just have to be aware of it. And then the last one is that there are limited data for smaller geographies, like when it gets way down into the block size for the census, sometimes they won't give you the number. And that goes back to the privacy concerns that Patrick was talking about, where there's a lot of cross-tabulations. They'll have like gender and race and so on. And if it's just a small subset, you can't get like the median income level of this race in this area. Especially like if you're out in Wyoming, then like who knows? There's just not enough people there that if you know anything, you can figure out who's who. Does that kind of make sense? Sometimes you'll see it, it'll just show up as like null or missing. Some other really good data sources that are done by the Census Bureau are there's an economic census that's done every 5 years, and this is really nice to have. And it measures different metrics on the economy, and it's also a census of governments that's done every 5 years, and it just tells you different facts about local governments. And so if you kind of want to compare our area to another area based on these figures, that's really nice to have. And that's pretty much it.